So, folks, there's this man named Ben Shapiro, once called the cool kids philosopher, inexplicably, because this man has never been cool for a goddamn second of his life. Anyway, he put out a video a few days ago titled, "Is Gerrymandering Actually Destroying Democracy?" And that's such a surface level fake, like, obvious question. Not a fake question, that doesn't make sense, but, like, you know what I mean. Like, it's such an obvious question that has an obvious answer, which is, yeah, when you subvert the democratic processes of your country, does that subvert the concept of democracy? And of course it does! Of course it does! What are you talking about? Does cheating on the test undermine the honesty of your grade? Yes! Come on.
Finish the show, but I'm getting a lot of questions from members, subscribers who want to know about gerrymandering and the census and what's going on with that and the history.
Also, I do think it's a good sign that a lot of the viewers of Ben Shapiro are going, wait a minute, what's up with this census thing? You mean this Donald Trump unilaterally countermanding the Constitution might have bad ramifications for democracy? Wait, tell us more, Ben. I'm sure you have great, unbiased insight, Ben. Sure. Let's go with that.
And all that stuff. I'm happy to answer your questions, but I'm not staying at the office. I'm going home, so just come with me and I'll explain. So let's talk about the magic of congressional redistricting and apportionment. Yeah.
His Superman review just got ratioed by NerdSync's video proving that he had never read a comic or seen any Superman movies. So he's probably sore.
Nomi Sunrider, thank you for the $5 super chat. His review of Superman was abysmally bad. Like 1000% abysmally bad. Like, dude must have learned who Superman was like 2 days ago, you know?
Yes, I know you're into it. Okay, fine. So here's how it works. Under the Constitution of the United
it's incredible to me. The President of the United States here has ordered something that is blatantly unconstitutional, and Ben Shapiro is just like, ugh, I bet you all find it so boring, don't you? Like, none of you actually really want to know this. It's just so boring. It's so boring you shouldn't even pay attention to it, but I guess I'll answer the question.
United States. The number of congressional districts held by any particular state is dependent on the number of people counted in the U.S. Census for that particular state. So, for example, if the census finds that there are 2 million people in a given state, then you get...
Why would you put this... Why would you record this in a car if you're just gonna blur out everything around? What is this? What is this editing decision?
A certain number of congressional districts for that population.
Is this gonna be the entire thing?
And that should hold for all the different states, obviously. Now,
why is it blurry? So you can't identify where he's driving, I guess.
Question is how those districts get drawn, because you can imagine,
or maybe not. I don't know, maybe to obscure anything that might be identifiable.
Imagine a situation in which a state with a 50% Republican population and 50% Democrat population ends up with 50% Republicans, 50% Democrats. Or you can imagine a situation in which the districts are drawn just so you end up with basically 90% Republicans and 10% Democrats, or vice versa. And it's the latter thing that has happened. So that began in 1812 with a guy named Elbridge Gerry. Okay, gerrymandering really should be called Gerrymandering. Elbridge Gerry was the Massachusetts governor, and he decided that he was going to draw the districts in a particular way. One of those districts looked like a salamander. Okay, like
what is the difference between Ben Shapiro and a water balloon? A water balloon can, in theory, get somebody wet. You're welcome.
In theory. Good thing I've read all theory. Knifeist Duck, thank you for the $5 dono. Appreciate it.
District on the map, and so people said that it was a gerrymander. Get it? A gerrymander. That's where that comes from. And so to this day, in most states, you have the state legislature determining exactly what the congressional districts look like. Now, very early on, there was actually no mandate, believe it or not, that every single congressional district represent the same number of people. So while the state as an aggregate was supposed to represent by its congressional number of seats a certain number of people, you could actually have districts that represented like one guy and districts that represented 20 people. And over time, that actually happened more and more. So a state would draw districts, and then they just kind of leave the districts. People would move in and out of these various districts, and this became increasingly unfair. Also, you'd have situations in which, again, for political reasons, people would be packing people into one sort of district or dispersing them broadly in order to ensure a majority or a minority of a particular type of voter in one district or another. This was basically the rule for a very long time in the United States of America, all the way up until the 1960s. In the 1960s, one particular 1962 Supreme Court case ruled you could actually have judicial oversight of the drawing of these districts. Until then,
Yeah, I wonder why that happened in 1960, Ben. Hey, Ben, what's the context of that happening in the 1960s? Why did that need to happen, Ben? I feel like you may have skipped over something between Gary, and the 1960s. What happened there, Ben? What happened there? Was there an entire chattel slave system that was overthrown and burned to the ground? Was there not like an increasing over time amount of discrimination towards freed African Americans? Was there not a crisis brewing in the country that needed to be rectified during the 1960s? Alan Smith, what do you think caused segregation? I was talking about what he was talking about in 1960. So yes, slavery happened, civil war happened, discrimination against freed slaves happened, Jim Crow, and then you had the civil rights movement, a decades-long process of building up the social capital, the social power, to actually get voting rights secured in place in this country. So he skipped over quite a bit here, actually.
it was just left to the states. The states got to do basically what they wanted. In 1962, there was a ruling by the Supreme Court, and it says now the judiciary can look at these districts and determine whether they are fair or not. And they did that largely because there had been a move, particularly in the Jim Crow South, to lower the impact of black voting districts. They'd pack all black voters into one district, for example, and then they would spread out white voters over a bunch of different districts. And so you would end up with a 90% black district with one congressperson, and then you'd end up with a bunch of white districts with congresspeople of a different party. What this typically meant is that there would be a reduction in the number of Republican seat holders, because remember, Republicans were the party of Reconstruction and the party of...
Oh my god. Oh my god, dude. Okay, so he's skipped over slavery, Jim Crow, etc., and now he's skipping over the ideological switch that happened that made the Conservative Party, formerly the Democrats, become the Republicans. He's now just no. It's all disingenuous. It's all disingenuous. He's skipping all of it to present like a very, very biased version of history to his audience. Yeah, historic. This is what happens when you roll a -1 on your history check in D&D. God.
Black voters for a very long period of time, and then Democrats would basically gerrymander a bunch of Democratic seats in the South.
Yeah, during those years, who were the conservatives, Ben? Which was the party of the conservative movement? It would be a dangerous maneuver for me, but I would love to ask Ben Shapiro follow-up questions, just basic follow-up questions about some of the points he has tried to make on his platform, because it's honestly shockingly bad. You know? Like, if you said this in a high school classroom, you would be laughed out of the room. You'd be laughed out of the room.
Okay, so in 1962, there is a ruling by the Supreme Court that says that judges can now review the drawing of these districts. In 1964, there's another ruling, and this is the famous one man, one vote ruling, where the courts basically say, once you redraw the districts, and you redraw them typically at least once every 10 years, you have to try and make it so that each district represents an equivalent number of persons. That way you can't have a district that represents one person and one that represents 19 people. And you're going to want to redraw those districts pretty regularly in order to ensure that population movement doesn't obscure the one man, one vote rule. There's also a ruling in this period that suggests that this also applies to state legislatures. So now the state legislatures can't basically be gerrymandered by one party or another. Then there's the Voting Rights Act of 1965, and that says that actually the federal government can do what's called pre-clearance of various gerrymandered maps, particularly in the Jim Crow South. So the idea is the federal government is going to look at all of these states that have historically discriminated against Black Americans, and it is going to actually force the states to submit their maps, and then it's going to pre-clear those. Okay, so by 2013, we've now moved beyond that. You don't need pre-clearance for specific states. There's really no evidence that, say, Mississippi is more racist than Massachusetts. And so in 2013,
I mean, I think maybe we could come up with some key metrics. I think maybe there might be a few ways to determine that, actually.
the court says no to that, but of course, the courts do have the ability to still oversee gerrymandering. That's particularly for racial discrimination. So political gerrymandering, the courts have traditionally stayed away from because they say, okay, fine. If Massachusetts is a Democrat state, and even though it's 35-40% Republican, all 9 of its Congress people are Democrats, that's really a political problem. That is not really a court.
Also, you know, I'm sorry, just like sitting there and thinking about it for a moment, I just wanted to throw this up on screen. This is the marker for where they pulled Emmett Till's body from the river. Every time they put up a sign, it becomes riddled with gun holes. They've had to replace it with a bulletproof sign made out of pure steel. I don't know, I think maybe there might be some metrics. Especially considering that happened in 1955. A 14-year-old boy massacred in 1955. And they keep defiling monuments to him. Like, they murder a kid and they go back and they shoot up this sign year after year after year. It's crazy. Also, you know where that happened? Oddly enough, Mississippi. I don't know, there might be some metrics. Just got a hunch.
Problem per se. When it comes to race, the courts obviously are a lot more stringent in trying to ensure that these districts are not being drawn simply to water down particular minority votes. Okay, so that is how gerrymandering traditionally works. What is happening in Texas right now is the Texas state legislature is looking at the maps and they're saying there are probably a couple more seats, maybe up to 5 more seats that could be created if we gerrymander in a particular way. And there's nothing new about this.
I love that Ben Shapiro's like, okay, now you know that process I just spent 5 minutes explaining is a bastardization of our democratic system. There's nothing wrong with Republicans doing it. Like, it's genuinely shocking, right? Like, he's just like, oh yeah, you know, there's nothing new about this. It's you know, whatever. It's everyone does it. Yeah, just take a puff, bro. Everybody does it. God. So, yeah, they're trying to destroy the method, not the method, the entire system of how our democracy works. That is what is at stake when we talk about a census, when we talk about redistricting. I can't articulate myself. Redistricting. So, it's a big deal. It's a really big deal. It's an existential deal, really. And even lowly centrist shills like Gavin Newsom recognize that this is an existential attack on America, on democracy, on, like, the system that gives him his power, you know?
There are 2 provisions of the census that come into question here. One is the census itself. It's done every 10 years. They're trying to do essentially a very, very large poll to try and determine what the population is in the various states. They can do that wrong. In 2020, they actually did do it wrong, and they admitted in 2021 that they had misdone the census. And that meant that there were a certain number of electoral college seats that should have gone to places like Texas and Florida and Arizona that instead ended up in New York and California. In fact, if the 2020 census had been done correctly, this is according to the Census Bureau, Donald Trump could have won the 2024 election without winning any of Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, or Michigan. That's how badly the census was done. So that is issue number 1 with the census. And then there's issue number 2 with the census, and that is...
Wasn't he president when the last census was done? Wait, like, wasn't Donald Trump president? Who was president when I don't know what days in 2020. When was the last conducted? Yeah, Trump was president all of 2020, so it doesn't matter what date. He was literally the president of the United States. So who's responsible for doing the last census poorly? Ben? God. It's so dumb.
Why are illegal immigrants counted in the census? This is a big problem for Republicans, because if you have hundreds of thousands of illegal immigrants, for example, in California, and they're counted in the census, that means California gets additional congressional seats where they really should not have them. Now,
that's not actually how that works at all, Ben. You went to law school, you dumb fuck. You disingenuous bullshit artist. You know it is established in constitutional law that it does not matter, and the Constitution does not stipulate whether you should count somebody who is a citizen or a non-citizen. You count all of the living people who are there, Ben. That is what is required under the Constitution. Literally anyone who looks at the Constitution, who has looked at any amount of the law on this topic, that is the conclusion they would come to. Ben, you literally have a law degree. What's wrong with you? You know this.
This is a big point of legal controversy. Does the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, which sort of redoes who is defined as a person, you'll recall that originally the Constitution, because of slavery, did not classify black Americans as full persons in the legal sense, which of course is morally wrong, but that was the compromise that was come to.
Ben is here arguing right now that it was morally wrong to count black people as 3/5 of a person, and I agree with that, while simultaneously arguing that it is totally fine by saying millions of people don't count as people for the purpose of the census at all. These are people who have lived and worked here, like in some cases almost their entire lives. Come on, Ben.
In order to establish a constitution. The 14th Amendment does away with that and says all persons are to be counted in the census. But there is one exclusion, and that is Indians not taxed, meaning Native Americans who are subject to the jurisdiction of a Native American tribe and therefore are not paying taxes in the United States. Well, should illegal immigrants be counted like, persons of the United States? People who are born here, or people who pay taxes here, or...
Yes, because the census exists to count the number of people.
To be
Ben.
fair, Ben may have graduated Harvard Law School on paper, but he has explicitly stated that he didn't listen to any of the professors who were trying to teach him at law school.
True, Pluvius. True. Yeah. Thank you for the $5 dono. And yes, Ben, you are supposed to talk. You're supposed to count the taxpayers and the non-taxpayers. That they do still count newborn babies, even though newborn babies don't pay taxes, Ben. Like, yeah, you count all persons in the United States. It is unambiguous.
Are subject to our laws, or should they be treated more like Indians not taxed? Now, the courts have traditionally ruled that the census covers all persons, which means illegal immigrants too.
Yes, that is the only way the courts have ruled.
President Trump wants to demonstrate through a new census that California, New York, a bunch of left-wing states that have taken in vast numbers of illegal immigrants are getting overcounted in the census, and that we ought to redo that such that American tax-paying citizens, law-abiding citizens, are the ones who have their representation under one man, one vote. So that's what all this controversy is about. Now, if taken to its logical extreme, this could get pretty spicy. I mean, right now, there are approximately...
Why are the buttons on his jacket so big? It's weird.
67 Republicans who are in Congress in blue states, and there's something like 39 Democrats who are in Congress in red states. If gerrymandering were taken to sort of its ultimate extreme, and red states made all of their districts red, and blue states made all of their districts blue, that would radically throw off the balance of power in the Congress of the United States. It would also lead to tremendous political polarization. It does seem like we are headed more and more down.
Oh, okay, so is gerrymandering actually destroying democracy? Yes. It sounds like the answer is yes.
On that road, because both parties have an interest in
but also it's fine if Texas does it, is a hell of a take.
Increased gerrymandering. Both parties have an interest in maximizing the number of seats they hold. The systems are not trusted, and once you lose institutional trust, the next thing that typically happens is that both sides start trying to exercise as much power as humanly possible. It's been over 10 years since Edward Snowden.
Incredible stuff. Well played, Ben. What an excellent breakdown of what's happening. I'm sure everyone who watched your video came away so much more educated than they were previously. You know, except about all of the things you skipped and misrepresented and were completely and utterly disingenuous about. Oh, boy. All right. Well, that's Ben Shapiro in a nutshell. And I gotta say, this is a guy who has been held up for all of my career as, like, the master debater, the virtuoso of, you know, conservative propaganda. And he's genuinely, like, fallen so far. Like, I have to be honest, this reads to me like he's having ChatGPT write his scripts. Or he handed off, like, the script for his show to, like, an intern, but my money's on ChatGPT. He's a toddler with slightly bigger words. I mean, it's true, you know? Anyway, folks, hit the like button. Like, comment, and subscribe. Do the things. You know how to help the show. You've been on YouTube before. Do the things.
Riverboat Jack is coming to town. All the viewers gather round. Twitch and YouTube is where she streams. All that content is bursting the seams. Politics, gaming, plenty more. Her sense of fashion you'll adore. So grab your stuff and hop aboard. We're going straight to Jack's Discord.